Okay, at this time I'd like to call the Technology Utilities Subcommittee meeting of the Lowell City Council to order for April 24th. The clerk, could please call the roll.
Councilor Janess?
Present.
Councilor Chow?
Here.
Councilor Scott?
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. I'd just like to note also present we have Councilor Eric Gitcher, Moran Fernandez, the city's Chief Information Officer, and Austin Ball, the City of Lowell's Deputy CFO. We have 2 items to continue our discussion on. The first item is to finish the comprehensive MIS update, forward-looking what MIS's plans are for the next year in terms of staffing and distribution of work. So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Fernandez at this time, and he can take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Janess. I handed out an updated sheet based on your feedback from the last meeting, which basically just has 1 page that outlines the MIS groups spread out across the city today, including City Hall, Police, Fire, Career Center, and Library. And then on the second page, it lays out the proposed FY25 MIS organization that we are recommending for moving forward with the organization, which brings everything together under 1 umbrella. And as you can see up above, under the CIO, there's a deputy CIO, along with 3 directors. This is the same that was presented last meeting that we had, only in a larger page view with all the same positions.
Great, I appreciate that. It's much easier to read and see what's going on. I guess at this point, I'd like to ask if either of my colleagues have any questions they'd like to bring forward at this time. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for being here to make the presentation on how important looking at the MIS for the City of Lowell is. Just to recap, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. There was some question the last week in terms of the total number of staff that will be part of the new grid here. And I know there were some numbers being thrown last time. I counted again today on the new chart. There are a total of 31 staff, is that correct? And currently, if you count just the staff from different departments, LPD, LFD, Library, and Career Center, of course, City Hall, I'm going to ask, what is the total staff right now?
That would be 23 right now.
23, so we jumped from 23 to 31.
Yes, sir.
With the new organization.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chow. Okay, no, we're good. So, Councilor Gitcher.
Thank you, Chairman Janess. I'm just going off the numbers because I did run them as Councilor Chow just did, and 31 from, he's not at 23 right now, he's at 17, the other 6 are in other departments, so that's not 23, but at the end of the day, it's a jump in a department of 8 new positions, which is 35%, which when you look at the numbers, you're looking at about roughly, I think, Austin had said 1.5 million. That's funded through the opera funds. So that's a continual cost that's going to come back to us year after year, and we're using one-time monies to support it to start, which is never a good auditing practice in the beginning of any community, and that's really what the base is. And that's what I was just trying to figure out, okay, where are we currently for positions, and where are we going in the future? And I don't ever disagree with the workload. I think that anytime you try to manage something, whether it's public safety, fire, all the assets that we have through IS systems, it's a lot of work. But when you watch the 1.5 million in the funding source, I wish there was another funding source from it rather than opera, because this is just a pass-on cost that's going to come back, maybe not in FY25, but it will be here in FY26. Through you to Mr. Ball, is the 1.5 million, within the 1.5 million figure, does that account for the benefits piece, like healthcare and everything?
Mr. Ball?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Gitcher, no, it does not account for that. And I'd like to note, too, the last time we had the subcommittee meeting 2 weeks ago, Mr. Baldwin and myself and Moran, we all discussed, funding this through ARPA, because this is straightforward, probably the easiest way to do it. But that doesn't mean that this is solely going to be heavily dependent upon ARPA. Mr. Baldwin and myself and Mr. Fernandez, along with some of the staff in the police department and the fire department, will look at other grants to try to offset some of these costs. So I just wanted to make that note.
But again, grants are one-time funds, and we're looking at one-time funds. And, Mr. Manager Golden is also in the room tonight. And just last night when we got the informational piece about the budget, it's a scary outlook. It's not as simple as, okay, here we have these funds. And I would agree about, to start it, would be something, but I think there's a lot of challenges in there. So that's really why I was highlighting the numbers piece. It was never about, okay, there's not some kind of need that can be pointed to. I think every department has a need that can be pointed to, and it's sometimes we have to manage it in increments, not all at one point. And I don't know, you're closer to $2 million with benefits than 1.5. And I think that is over a 1% jump in the taxpayers' amounts, that they've already went up 9% in the last 2 years, plus assessments, plus their water and sewer went up 12% each. So that's why I ask these questions and say, okay, where are we? And that I would rather be prepared during budget time than not prepared for these conversations. And we also ask that you send out the packet in advance, which we just got. So I'm trying to digest it at the same time. I don't know how quickly Councilor Chow did that, but he's pretty fast at putting these numbers together and reading through this, and I thank you for that. But I came early so I could actually talk to Moran and Austin and try to get this piece together. But, Mr. Manager, I know other departments are probably putting in for their wants the same way. When we look at, the pothole piece, and I know that they're two different total animals. They should never be compared. But we also look at public safety. We have major issues that we could use more help and more investment in other areas. So, you only have $1, and we're trying to stretch it to a lot of masters here. And I guess it comes to priorities. Is this your top priority, this department reorg? Or one of them?
I'd like to acknowledge we're joined by City Manager Tom Golden. And
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, councilors, and through you to the member. This is one of the top priorities, Councilor. The enterprise funds, I think that we're going to have to continue to discuss with the council as a whole. The enterprise funds themselves, we can take trash as an example. Trash has been since 2008. I want to make sure that is the correct number. We have not looked at trash in an increase of $125, which brings in approximately $3.2 million, $3.3 million, where the value of that is $8.8 million. And I'm looking to Mr. Ball to make sure I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I'm pretty close. So with the enterprise account being $5 million not funded correctly, or not funded to do, and Councilor, you know enterprise accounts are supposed to run like individual businesses, it's a $5 million plus deficit. And that is being taken off of the overall budget itself. So I'd like to try to bring the enterprise accounts to the side for a moment, because once again, I know the council knows this, I know the mayors, I know everybody here knows this, but the enterprise accounts are something that is supposed to run on their own, similar to a limited liability corporation or anything. But to say that this is one of our major, with the Technology and Utility Subcommittee, to say this is one of our major initiatives, I have to agree 100%. This is something that we need to have happen. We have been, through no fault of Mr. Fernandez and the organization he's part of, but it is time that one department, one person is making a decision that affects basically the entire city. We ran into this, and I think very highly of our chairman, who is in this world. I support this 100%. And to answer the question, yes, I think this is one of our major pieces. As we know, we're tackling other pieces other than enterprise accounts. We're also going after roadways, the horizontal construction, which we talk about often enough. We're spending under $4 million, and now we're in the process of spending in the double digits, whether 11, 12, 13, how you want to look at how we spend it and how we put it forward. So, and yes, this is stuff that has been delayed. These are issues and problems that have been inherited by most of the council. I understand fully that I'm asking the council to do something very difficult and hard, and that's raising revenue. But if we want to continue to go in the direction that we're going, I think this piece, the MIS piece, which I have a lot of faith in this committee, I have a lot of faith in Mr. Fernandez. I can tell you once again, I've sat with many people who came in here to talk to us about what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and Mr. Fernandez knows some of this, doesn't know all of it. When Mr. Fernandez left the room, I had very frank discussions with people who are, and I'll say quote unquote, the experts, and I'm going to put Mr. Fernandez in that. People through the state, people through federal, that came in to tell us that what we did was the right way to do this, and you need to revamp this particular department where one person's making the call, one person's making the decisions. So I think that this committee is looking at this deeply. I thank you very much, because quite frankly, this stuff is out of my my bailiwick. This is computers are not my strong suit, and I apologize publicly to Mr. Fernandez and his staff for every time I called down there to say I think I did it again. But to answer that question very seriously and honestly and openly, Councilor, yes, this is one of the things that we need to have happen for the betterment of the entire city in the future.
In the 35 years I've been in municipal government, I have never seen job creations created over the past as we have with the opera money. You never create jobs based off of one-time funds. And we have to make tough decisions that are going to come, whether to cut those jobs off when the opera faucet closes. And that's what the question's going to come down to. You're either going to pass that cost on to the taxpayer at some point, or what do we do? And that's really what we're saying here is, if this is, the driver is this, then let's put it on the tax base and do it right away. And look at the opera money where it needs to go in other areas that are going to be cut in a year. Because this is going to be a tough thing in another year when you're looking at, yeah, it's going to be smoke and mirrors right through this year, but in the fall, and I use that language loosely, but in the following years, this is going to actually watch the jump in salaries. That's why I asked how many positions are funded through opera. What's the plan for them going forward? Right now, I was very impressed with the manager and his staff with the informational piece that came out last night. But like Councilor Janessa and I talked about the trash, and we had that discussion, said, oh, look at this. The drivers, the makeup area, are you going to take that out and put it into an enterprise fund and then try to pass it on as a cost to the actual users? And that's a reduction in your difference in your budget of a 3% jump to the taxpayer. But it will be paid for out of another area. So that's where the challenges are going to come in when you're looking at the delta of that type of money of $5 million. There's a delta there that's about a 3% increase to everybody. So I just looked at the numbers, and that's why I asked about how many positions are new, how many are being just transferred over, how many are actually being affected by opera. I think it's a good conversation that we all should have in the beginning. And are there ways to go in this more soft than okay, this is the plan for 20-year future? Can we go into it in increments of 2 years at a soft start rather than a hard
Councilor
start?
Gitcher, I don't want to cut you off, but I appreciate the angle you're coming at this from and the decision points that we'll be facing this board as we move along. I think tonight, though, we're just mainly looking at the structure and to kind of get that as an update to the council. We don't have any decision points on this tonight, and I suspect that we'll be talking about this and so many more things when it comes to budget time, when we make these bigger decisions. I'm just a little worried about going down a rabbit hole when we have another item on the agenda.
No, I know, and I just was looking at, on your agenda, it says future plans, so that's part of the future plans. That's what I was talking about, an agenda item, which is future plans.
No, I appreciate that, but I just, Mr. Fernandez, I don't know if you have anything you might want to add, or Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the council. I think the ARPA discussion is a very good piece, but I think we also need to remember we could be going down a rabbit hole, sir, so I don't want to do that. But ARPA was really meant to bring back the workforce, and I believe that the way we're doing it, Councilor, this is a soft landing because of the growth over the next few years. This is a challenge, ladies and gentlemen. This is, you know, to the residents, to the taxpayers. This is one challenge that we have, and when we're putting these budgets together, I do fully understand that I'm asking the council to do things that are rather difficult. But we can all recognize that we're starting to see some of the changes in the city that are very important. So from the financial aspect, Councilor, you're correct, but this is that soft start, if you would, to get us over the next 2 years, the hump here. But this particular technology and utilities subcommittee, which you're debating tonight, is so vitally important to the well-being of our city through its entirety. So thank you very much for that. And Mr. Fernandez probably has other things to say, or if you have questions, but I'll gladly stay here to listen to anything that the council needs me to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I know Councilor Scott has a question.
I do have a question. So I also have concerns, obviously, about using ARPA funds for this many positions. So my question around this is, I guess, from, you know, more of a lay person. I don't have the expertise in technology and utilities like Councilor Janess does. But my question is, where did we arrive at this number of new positions? Like, what analysis went into, or what comparisons drove you to say this is the number that we need to have you know, this is in relationship to the cyber attack that happened, was the origination of this. Where did we come up with this, I guess, and has that been shared? Or could that be shared?
Mr. Fernandez.
That's a great question, Councilor. That was fundamentally one of the reasons why during the presentation at the last meeting, I tried to underscore where we came from, going from 1988 to 2024 in 5-year increments, showing not only how the MIS departments across the city evolved, but also how technologies got introduced throughout the city and what they caused and created, and the enormous amount of effort and work that goes into technology with the personnel that are here, and how they have worked extremely hard, like all the other departments, to keep up and maintain and keep things going. I can tell you, Councilor, that a lot of work went into this, and it was not done in a vacuum. It was done in conjunction with conversations with Springfield, Worcester, Cambridge, even Fall River was reached out to, a couple of other municipalities were reached out to. There's also a National Association of CIOs that also has information out there about organizational structures and how they've evolved over time. Here in Massachusetts, if we looked at, say, for example, Worcester, I can tell you that as of fiscal year 24, Worcester had 37 on their staff for innovation and technology. Springfield had 29 as of 24. Cambridge had 42, and the City of Lowell has 16 on staff, 11 in place for MIS for the city that are hired with several vacancies. So the numbers were assessed across the city and looked at nationally. Also, one of the things that I looked at was how these organizations lay out their org charts. And I don't want to, for lack of using the word silo, but how they put their focus together. And when we look at the proposed organizational chart, a big focus was on public safety. If we look at public safety over the years and how it's evolved and what they've had to do and what they've managed to do and their institutional knowledge loss with people leaving, as well as with folks just, positions not being filled, they are down several people. And that's just on the public safety side. Fire is down several people as well. So the idea was to incorporate public safety together to ensure equity so that the technology would be aligned across the public safety environment, including fire and police. So we wouldn't wind up in a situation like we did years ago when the INET was implemented and all these leased police stations received connections, but none of the firehouses did. And then half of the leased police stations were relocated, and we had to incur all these other expenses to change things around. By putting this all together, it allows us to make sure that we have a centralized assessment and review and understanding of technology across the entire organization. We also broke out applications and operations because they are fundamentally different in terms of what they deliver. And one of the pieces that all the other organizations that I've spoken to have been very surprised when they learn that we don't have a technology trainer in-house. Everyone's like, what do you mean you don't have anybody doing training? No, I've been doing a lot of training. Other folks on the team have done training, but there's only so much time available. That's why a dedicated technology trainer to assist with the training needs of the entire organization is critical. And we're also looking at aligning with the Career Center in terms of things that they have a technology trainer as well, but that technology trainer is very specific to their patrons at the Career Center. But being able to work together in methods and ways to deliver technology training are key, so the alignments are there.
So just so I understand, looking at, Springfield has this many, Worcester has this many, we're not in alignment with that, but what deficiencies do we have? I guess that, because not having the same number of staff doesn't necessarily mean that we aren't doing things that need to be done or.
Excellent point, Council. I agree with you completely. It is not just a numbers game. It is about delivery of services. And the bottom line is we're all working hard, very hard, and we're trying to work smarter. And by putting this organization together the way that we're proposing it, it allows us to deliver technology in a smarter way across the organization. The technology trainer is just one element. Making sure that if we say public safety, for example, on the fire side right now they have one person. That person has plenty of vacation, goes out on vacation. They could have needs that arise during the week and there's no one to support them. Again, by consolidating it under public safety, that ensures that they're covering the entire organization, all the firehouses, all the police precincts, all the personnel that are there, their technology needs. On the application side, making sure that we don't have anyone managing our web environment, our web infrastructure, making sure that we have an application specialist to ensure that our web services are cohesively being delivered in conjunction with the communications team, which has its own separate set of areas that it's focused on, but being able to do that together. Over in the city operations side, bringing in a desktop support specialist, which we used to have two. One was lost from layoff, so that's clearly from ARPA being able to bring the workforce back, and bringing in a junior person so that we have someone that we have these several people working together to cover the entire organization, including the library, the Career Center, et cetera, where we don't have that today. again, trying to work smarter.
And you have a backlog that's not being met
Our
right now?
backlog
is
right
that-
now, we have a backlog of about 1,400 service requests.
See, that's very helpful to hear. I think that's helpful
ma'am.
information going into this. Is
Yes, we've had over 15,000 service requests since June 11th of last year through early April. And that is only on the city side, where we have 11 personnel in the staff. And, all of us are working extremely hard to get through it. And there are a lot of departments that are unhappy with our service delivery because they're waiting for stuff. One of the fundamental issues that not having a clear organizational path in many levels here that we experienced were licensing. In many cases, licenses were purchased, implemented, installed by other groups, other departments even. They were never registered with us. No one told us. So when we recovered from the cyber event, all of a sudden there's a dozen people who need a certain software package. We are only aware of 5 licenses, and everyone needs them, and no one can find any of their information about when they supposedly originally purchased it, how it came into being to be installed, because they installed it on their own. In moving to the centralized organization that we're proposing and moving to all the new features of tools that we've implemented, we're making sure that all the licenses that get licensed are tracked, are managed. I wind up being the bottleneck right now on approving licenses. So there's a lot of people waiting for licenses to be approved because I have to go in, verify things, double check things. I don't have someone else to do it. All of us are doing everything we can to ensure the day-to-day operations, and we're getting really bogged down, and it's causing everything to slow down incredibly right now.
okay. Thank you.
Councilor Chow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Fernandez, that was a great answer. I think you answered 80 or 90% of the concerns I have. Basically about what are the other municipalities are doing, the discussions you had working and collaborating with other professionals in IT world in the Commonwealth here. Earlier this year, I was able to attend the MMA annual conference, the Mass Municipal Association conference, and one of the seminars I attended was actually on cybersecurity. And one of the questions that came up was, how many towns or city in the Commonwealth, it's like 350 something, 351, 352. How many towns, cities have been hacked by cybersecurity? And basically, the expert there, we had experts from the state and the federal level, from the FBI, you know it. They were all there part of the seminar, and pretty much it was saying every town in the state of Massachusetts have been affected by cybersecurity in some form or another. Some have been hacked, probably worse than Lowell, and some have been touched upon, some kind of security breach. But the other things that they said that was important, once a system that has been hacked, these dark web people, these companies out there, they kind of know the way ins and out around the system, and they tend to come back and reattack the same system. So I think it's, just listening to, a lot of thoughts went into this, and I also want to thank the city manager for being here, this being a priority. You chose to be here to participate in this meeting. You normally don't sit in many subcommittee meetings, so it is very important. And I think if we don't have some kind of an overhaul of a system as we have right now, certainly it did not work. That's why we got breached. We were affected. But if we don't do something now or in the near future, most likely, lack of a better word, we're going to get revisited by these dark web cyber security attack people of some kind. Whether it's going to be like a small breach or a big breach like we had, it's going to be very, very damaging in this day and age. A lot have been done, as you mentioned, as you answered Councilor Scott's questions, and a lot of concerns. I think it is the right direction. It's the right time to discuss this matter right now, and a lot of the concerns that we have. We want this new department, so to speak. We need the number of staff to work it. The concerns that we all have is pretty much the funding. And as the chairman mentioned, we don't want to get ahead of our time because right now it's just information gathering. But if you could just give us like a small glimpse, like when you talk to all these other municipalities, are they facing the same issues with budgetary issues and so forth and constraints? And I know just in the working of the city of Lowell, many of the other MIS department with the career center and so forth, they do receive some kind of grants or funding year in, year out continually. Do you see that as part of the other towns like Springfield, Worcester? Do you see that as part of the plan in terms of financing this new department, so to speak? I know at some point, we've got to make some hard decision, but I think it helps us alleviate, solve some of the worries, some of the concerns we have if we were able to obtain dependable grants and fundings year in, year out. Do you see that in other towns and municipalities?
Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Councilor. Those are all great points. One of the things that I've had an opportunity to participate in at the state level has been a steering committee related to cybersecurity. A couple of months ago, everyone probably heard about the cybersecurity grants that were made available through the Commonwealth. That money came down through the federal government. In the Commonwealth, it was placed on the steering committee's hands at the state level. About 24 personnel across the state participated in trying to identify how to roll that money out to the municipalities and agencies across the state and how to improve the cybersecurity posture for all of these agencies. We certainly applied for that and will continue to apply for any other grants that come about. Unfortunately, we can't rely on grants to cover either personnel or expenses, but every grant opportunity that comes up, whether it's through other members of the grant personnel here at the city who raise them to our attention, or through delegation, the state delegation that often notifies us. Recently, I was just notified about another grant that we're going to pursue. We are looking to leverage all those grants to assist with many of these opportunities. While they may not necessarily cover personnel, they may cover expenses in other areas. So, for example, when we pursue this reorganization, the idea is to say we're looking to organize the personnel first, but this is talking about the personnel expenses. We haven't talked about the actual technology expenses that are over in police or over in fire. That's a second phase. That's a separate phase. And many of those things are covered through grants as well. When we talk about the areas here like cybersecurity, fortunately, through the prior administrations and prior councils, including councilors that are here today, the positions that we have today, the cybersecurity specialist and cybersecurity administrator, were authorized. We have many positions posted. The cybersecurity specialist, we are hoping to bring somebody on board very soon who can assist with that throughout the organization. And in terms of trying to avoid this from happening in the future, there's an outstanding motion request that I'm preparing for Councilor Scott. And part of the delay is actually in putting together costs and trying to attribute costs, as well as trying to assess what's going on elsewhere in government. As you said, Councilor, you're 100% spot on. Practically every municipality and agency across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has experienced some manner, form, or type of cyber-related event. It's a key phrase to use. We've moved away from saying a hack or a this or a that. Cyber-related event, which we've used from the beginning of the event, is any event that essentially is security-related from an external force, or it could also be internal, but whether it's someone clicking on a link that does something, or somebody introducing something through a flash drive, or something coming in through an email or whatnot, there's so many different vectors or ways that these bad actors can access information and attempt to gather information, steal information, and impact the organization. We had a unique opportunity when this event occurred. You always want to look for a silver lining. The silver lining to us was we had an opportunity to rip everything out and start it from scratch. So we had 30 plus years of stuff that had been installed and implemented, and you never get an opportunity to redo stuff. We rebuilt everything, and we rebuilt it using current best practices, which may have evolved over time, and changing things out. Certainly, that was one of the reasons why there have been a lot of things impacted in the organization, whether it was the Wi-Fi in different places, or whether it was how folks access the internet, how we secure the websites that folks go to. To your earlier assessment that yes, some of these bad actors gather information and attempt to later come back in and attempt to get back into the organization. When we went through and we redid everything from scratch, those were some of the things that we took into consideration in closing up as much as we could in order to change everything out and use best practices and leverage what tools are out there today in order to avoid it. Can we say that it'll never happen again? Absolutely not. That would be foolhardy, and we would never suggest that, but we are doing our best to minimize the risk to the taxpayer and to the organization at all, in general.
Okay. I don't see any other questions on this, so I thank you for this update. I look forward to sharing it with the rest of the council. And I think at this point, we can move to the second item on the agenda, which is the proposed position of Deputy Chief Information Officer within the MIS organization. So at this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Fernandez if he can introduce us all to this position a little bit, and we can go from there.
Thank you, Councilor. So Deputy Chief Information Officer, it's a wordy title, but essentially it's someone within the technology organization that's very technical, that's a high-level person, it's a high-level position. This is not just someone who's going to be answering calls and going to be going out to fix an iPad. This is someone who understands the technology, and we have a lot of technology here. The network infrastructure, all the different elements that integrate with the network infrastructure, all the different applications and systems throughout the organization, including those that are on the public safety side of things, for example. The need for a position like this has been in place for years. Certainly, right now we have a total of 17 funded positions, and that's a lot for one person to manage. If we're looking to move to a different model where we have a total of 31, it's even that much more. That's why in the organizational chart we have it broken down so that the Deputy CIO and I are working together, managing the directors, but also working and focused on very specific areas that we'd be most knowledgeable in. The Deputy CIO would be heavily focused on network infrastructure, everything that ties everything together throughout the organization, all of that equipment. The need for this type of role has evolved in some of these other municipalities. So to Councillor Scott's earlier question of what else is in place out there, how we arrived at it, and what other organizations use deputy CIOs or deputy directors as they may be named. And I can tell you that these positions have been in place in other municipalities going as far back as fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 10 and beyond in some organizations. But now is the time here at the City of Lowell to bring somebody in, someone who can really focus on these things, certainly free up my efforts for other places that I need to be focused on, and be able to assist these MIS directors to be able to focus on their areas within the organization. The salary range is equitable and in line with what other organizations, other municipalities have. It's certainly, as all of us know, lower than what you would find in the private industry, but it is in line with what other municipalities have for this type of position, for this level. And as we all know, many positions in the city wind up getting posted many times trying to find a candidate that turns it down because of salary. And we're hoping to position this correctly to be able to bring somebody on board as quickly as possible to hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. At this point, I'll open it up. Any of my colleagues have any questions? Councilor Chow.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I briefly scanned through the memorandum in front of me, and I see that the deadline for the application was back in January 18. Should apply to deadline January 18. Is that like a typo? Has we put? I just read through this really quickly. This is the last page.
My apologies, Counselor. This was a posting that was copied in order to create the essential duties and responsibilities. That would have been a typo from the original that was brought in. I apologize for that, Counselor.
That's what I figure. Because my question, if you, would look, I would just be wondering if there would be a lot of interest. I mean, the salary, like you mentioned, sounds, equitable and fair for a municipality, but as you know, it's day and age, they could be making a lot of money out in the private sector. How likely is it to find a qualified person with this salary range?
I believe it is likely. In many positions that we are proposing, the first thing we would want to do is open them up internally for internal candidates before taking them externally. But we believe it is likely that we can identify an applicant for this position as well as the other positions that we have laid out in the org chart.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Just out of curiosity, the part about it being ARPA funded for this position as well, do you think that will be a deterrent in filling some of these positions? I work for municipality, it would be for me. So I'm just curious if you think that would become an issue.
I don't think it would, Counselor. I firmly believe that these positions will pay sufficient dividends that if the city were to pursue saying, you know what, we need to general fund them, that by the time that opportunity arrives, that they will have proven their value sufficiently for the organization to understand why we should look at doing so, otherwise handling it accordingly.
Thank you.
Councilor Kitcher.
Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, when we asked about doing a study on positions, wage, salaries, and everything like that, was this position included in there to figure out what communities you would go to get these type of positions? And did we go to the Collins Center or someone to pull these places that you would have a comparable salary with and for this type of position?
Mr. Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, through you to the council. In this situation, we did not. Quite frankly, the Collins Center, when we've worked with them, I find it a lot easier for us to make our actual calls ourselves around to find out what is happening. The Collins Center seems to be a little backed up, and quite frankly, I don't want to disparage, but we can do it a lot quicker, to be quite honest with you.
My question was, we were looking at structure and we were looking at everything in general to see how can we be more efficient, and I just wondered, that's all. So what communities did we look at, and where is this salary come from, just so that we can base something?
Counselor, I can tell you that specifically here, I've got values from Worcester, Springfield, Cambridge. Fall River specifically is included, but they don't have a deputy CIO. They actually do a lot of things outsourced, completely outsourced most of their technology. But in the comp numbers I have here, they're Worcester, Springfield, and Cambridge.
Okay, so places that are much larger than Lowell. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Cambridge as well. But while you're right that they may be larger than Lowell in many ways, the technology and the technology needs, or the technology that is used to service the population or the internal organization, is similar.
Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Just because it was just mentioned, outsourcing, is there a reason that we're not looking at outsourcing when we're looking at one-time revenues like we are right now?
That's a great point, Counselor, and I agree that that's something that is worth looking at. However, the problem is when you're outsourcing, those prices become very a la carte because of scopes of work, and they spiral very quickly, and we have a lot of technology. We have looked at leveraging third parties, leveraging vendors that are on state contracts for some of the things that we do, and the costs are exorbitant. Just looking at software support, saying, hey, what would it cost to have a third party deliver software support services to the city? Would be the same cost as several positions in MIS. The quickness with which they can respond to it is not there, and the fact that they wouldn't understand how we use those tools. So it's just the function of how we use those tools versus what tools are out there that are available for technology. it doesn't make sense for us. Fall River's technology is very different from ours, very specifically. I mean, they're a great community, and they have a lot of opportunity there, but they just leverage a different level of technology than what we've leveraged here.
Thank you.
Just one more quick
Sure.
question.
Councillor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the position of Deputy CIO here, and in the context that we spent the first half of the meeting about the new organization, how is that? Is this person, is that going to be the starting, this person, I know there could not be any connection, but is this person, this new Deputy CEO, is this the beginning of starting, initiating the new organization structure that we're trying to do? Or independently, this person can help with the cybersecurity until the new structure is being developed?
Excellent point, Councillor. Yes, this position is a keystone to the entire organization because this is the highest level position apart from myself in the organization and is intended to be able to assist with leveraging many of these other areas and to provide a backup or a next tier level of support for a few of these positions that we are looking to build out.
Thank you. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I believe that there's an action that's required from this committee to bring the recommendation of the WCIO back to the council. Is that what we're trying to do here?
In order to move forward, we would need to bring this back to the full council so that it could go forward to a public hearing to create the position.
Okay. I'd like to make that in the form of a motion to bring this back to the city council. Would it be in the sense of, are we recommending, or how do?
I'm not ready to do that at this time. I want it to be part of the larger discussion at the budget time. So, I mean, it's going to come forward to the entire body anyways, correct?
This would not, because the way that this is written, this is specifically talking about doing it this budget year.
So is it my understanding, I don't know if the city manager could help out with the wording of what we're trying to, so is it an ask for the subcommittee to bring maybe I'm using the wrong term, is it a recommendation back to the city council, because we need to start this process. So would it be a motion to bring this forth to the entire city council for a public hearing and then for a vote? Not necessarily that the council approves it, but the point of this meeting is to gather this information and bring a report back to the city council body and then recommend it to the council body to take it to the public hearing. Is that correct?
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the council. Council, you are correct. I mean, we're looking to move expeditiously today, or as fast as we can, and within the next few weeks. I just want to bring it back that when I was presented with this as well, I'm concerned, right, with the financial, the general budget, but this is too important that I really truly believe we need to move forward today. We've talked since I've been here, almost it's be 2 years in the next 4 days or so. We've talked about the continuity with especially things like the CFO, the CIO. We have a deputy CFO now for continuity purposes. I think it's vitally important from MIS's standpoint to have a deputy CIO officer for continuity purposes. But given the fact that we have a deputy over the assessor's office, I mean, I think it's important for us as a community, as a city, to make sure that continuity is the most important thing. It's difficult to talk about this while this gentleman's sitting to my left. But during the high time when things were literally on fire, there was no vacation, there was no time, there was no opportunity to sit back because we don't have that second in command. And when I say no opportunity to sit back, Saturdays, Sundays, and then Monday came again. I think that this is something we need to deal with today. I do think ARPA is the right vehicle because it gives us that takeoff and understanding in 2 years we need to land this. As Councilor Gitcher had asked earlier, is this the number one piece? This is one of them. We have so many items, so many issues that we're dealing with, but shutting down our city, as this did for the short time it happened, this is something I feel as though that I would request that we move expeditiously on. Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies. Unfortunately, this is going to be a part of our new life. We can go after grants, we can go after federal money, we can go after state money, and I think to Mr. Fernandez's point, that's going to be for the updating or the upgrading of a software or things of that nature. I look to the Shannon grant that we have for our police officers and our fire departments. It's a small portion. It doesn't necessarily pay for the whole piece, but it's a small portion, and I think all of these grants will be those small portions, those small opportunities, which we will always be very, very grateful for. But at the end of this, in 2026, I see this needing, it must, move into the 2027 budget, if that's, Mr. Ball, if I'm saying that correctly. It must move into the FY 2027 budget as we have amended here. And all of the ARPA positions that we do put out, to your point, Councilor Scott, we do flag that and say this is an ARPA-funded position. So I would respectfully request that the hard work that's been done here, that we move forward as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And at this point, listening to the everyone who talked about the importance of security for our city, and this being a presentation, a recommendation from the administration, at this point, I'd like to make a motion to bring this to the for the position of the Deputy CIO to the City Council for approval for public hearing. That's my motion.
Okay, motion on the floor by Councilor Chow, second by Councilor Scott. Roll call, please.
Counselor Janess,
Yes.
Counselor Chow,
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes all the business before this body tonight. So I entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. Motion to adjourn? Second. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.